A set of islands, hundreds of miles from the closest land, isolated, remote, and wild. Islands like these support unique ecosystems cut off from continents and intrigue naturalists as they unravel the mysteries of evolution. These islands, the Pribilof Islands of the Bering Sea, harbor an unusual tale. In the late 1800s, the Pribilofs attracted an artist and budding naturalist, but led him down a turbulent path where he was forced to confront the demands of industry. As a naturalist, he documented life on the Pribilofs, but the experience turned his attention to conservation, racing to protect an animal in danger of extinction. Formed by volcanic eruptions over the last 2 million years, the Pribilof Islands were once hills lying near the edge of the Bering Land Bridge. As sea levels rose, the Bering Sea isolated the Pribilofs, leaving the largest islands of St. Paul and St. George, now over 300 miles from mainland Alaska. The Pribilofs are a naturalist's paradise. Millions of migrating seabirds flock to the storm-battered cliffs, while Arctic fox, songbirds, and a host of wildflowers inhabit this treeless and windswept landscape. But the Pribilof Islands are most noteworthy as home to one of the greatest gatherings of marine mammals, the northern fur seal. For millennia, the fur seals have migrated here each summer to breed on the low-angled, rocky beaches shrouded by fog. These animals were, in fact, the reason Russian explorers came here in the first place. With 300,000 hairs per square inch, the fur seal's pelt has been sought after for centuries. In the 1700s, Pramishleniki, or Russian fur traders, swept across the Aleutian Islands, hunting the sea otter to near extinction. With the sea otters diminishing, they chased the fur seal north. Fog and unpredictable seas hid their secret destination for years. But in 1786, Gerasim Pribilof found the bounty in the Bering, the Pribilof Islands. Pribilof's discovery brought settlement to these islands, but with it came greed, deceit, and decimation. In the years that followed, the fur seal persevered through 2 centuries of commercial use. From 1868 to 1911, it was the naturalist Henry Wood Elliott who witnessed the most extreme harvesting of the Pribilof fur seal. In the late 1800s, sealing in the North Pacific grew into an international affair, and during its heyday, tens of thousands of seals were slaughtered annually. Fur seal pelts became the luxurious fur coats demanded by wealthy men and women during the late 19th and early 20th centuries. In 1867, 8 decades after the discovery of the Pribilof Islands, the United States bought the Alaskan territory from Russia. It has been speculated that this gigantic land purchase was primarily to gain access rights to harvest the fur seals, what was then Alaska's most valuable resource, and would prove to be an extremely profitable industry. In 1872, Henry Elliott, artist and naturalist from the Smithsonian Institution, arrived on the Pribilof Islands as an assistant treasury agent to the United States government. To harvest the seals, the government granted an exclusive lease to the ACC, or the Alaska Commercial Company. Charged with overseeing the seal harvest, Elliott worked to ensure that the ACC adhered to its quota. The company was allowed to take 100,000 3- and 4-year-old bachelor seals each year. As an adept watercolorist, Elliott documented the experience, providing some of the earliest known images of the Pribilof seal harvest and illustrating the fur seal's spectacular abundance. From his report,
multitudes of polosikachi are filing in long strings or deploying in vast platoons. The breath which rises into the cool air from 100,000 hot throats hangs like clouds of white steam in the gray fog itself.
During his work for the U.S. Treasury, Elliott was astonished to find that no one had intensely studied the northern fur seal, and as a result, there was little understanding of how to best manage the industry. So he set out to document the fur seal's life history and map its distribution. Elliott was an accomplished field artist, but this would be his first biological endeavor. He remarked,
"At the time of the acquisition of Alaska, even the Smithsonian Institution did not possess a perfect skin and skeleton of the northern fur seal. Strange to say, this animal was so vaguely known, even to scientific men, that it was without representation in any of the best zoological collections of the world."
The limited work for him to build on came from only a handful of scientists, one of whom was Georg Steller, who named the fur seal Ursus marinus, the sea bear. When Elliott first arrived in April of 1872, the beaches were empty. He learned that the northern fur seal winters at sea, as far away as Southern California, Japan, and the open Pacific Ocean. In May, he watched the 400 to 500-pound males arrive through the fog, and he agreed with Steller. The fur seal was no ordinary seal. Unlike other seals and like bears, Elliott recorded that the fur seal has a visible ear, which places fur seals with sea lions in the family of eared seals, Otaridae. Though it spends the majority of its life at sea, the strong upper body also allows the fur seal to be at home on land. The limbs walk forward together. The pelvis moves in the same manner, but is smaller, adapted for marine life. Elliott described the foreflippers as dark, bluish-black hands, stretched out with the same bones as a human, fingernails embedded in the middle. Witnessing this species' extraordinary agility on land, Elliott recorded the northern fur seal to have the most remarkable and highly organized social structure of all seals. Male fur seals grow massive canines and are extremely aggressive and territorial. Elliott found this behavior absolutely fascinating.
"I saw him there, covered with scars and frightfully gashed. Raw, festering and bloody, one eye gouged out, but lording it bravely over his harem. When land and water are weighted in account together, there is no other animal known to man classed superior from a purely physical point of view. There are few creatures that can be said to exhibit a higher order of instinct, approaching even our intelligence."
Subjective comments such as these brought this new scientist much criticism. While truth poured straight from his paintbrush, it often strayed from his pen, diverted by his strong convictions. Because of this and his lack of formal training, Elliott's methods and conclusions were often questioned by the scientific community. During Elliott's first tenure on the Pribilof Islands, he created detailed distribution maps and completed the first official population estimate for the total number of fur seals. Walking all 42 miles of coast on St. Paul, he discovered more than 16 miles were fur seal rookeries or hauling grounds. The rookeries, he found, were strategically located on well-drained, gently sloped beaches. From his observations, he calculated that each individual fur seal, on average, required only a 2 feet by 1 foot area and used the law of uniform distribution to determine his estimates. Having mapped all suitable coastline habitat, Elliott concluded there were more than 4.5 million fur seals on the Pribilof Islands. In October of 1873, after a year and a half on the Pribilofs, Elliott returned home to Cleveland with his Russian Aleut wife, Alexandra Melovidov, and their infant daughter, Grace. At the time, Elliott was content with the sealing operation of the Alaska Commercial Company and saw no possible threat to the parades of seals. Over the next several years, Elliott would make subsequent trips to the Pribilofs, continuing to study the fur seal's natural history. In 1881, he published The Seal Islands of Alaska, which described the habits, environments, and harvesting of the northern fur seal. Most importantly, he presented the first detailed account of the fur seal's reproductive strategy, the key to their survival. Early in the summer, pregnant females arrive at the Pribilof Islands, coming on land for the first time in 8 months. This female bulges with the pup that will be born within a day or two, or even hours. Elliott learned that females usually return to their birthplace. However, getting there may not be so easy. Males have sought out territorial rights on the water's edge, jockeying for position to be the first to intercept the arriving female. They herd her aggressively as she heads for the female group. Fighting males are often distracted, giving others an opportunity to steal her. The biggest and strongest males defend the best territories, and females usually settle in large groups. Many females suffer serious wounds, but rest in the relative calm of each other. There they await the coming of their young. Within hours of her arrival, the pup is born. Elliott watched immediate bonds form between mother and pup. She quickly learns the pup's distinctive call and scent. This proves crucial when later the mother must find her pup amidst a shoreline of thousands. Shortly after the pups are born, the males mate with the females and sire the next generation. The females, therefore, only spend 3 to 7 days of every year not pregnant. For the rest of the summer, the female will support 3 lives: herself, her pup, and her newly fertilized egg. This would prove to be Elliott's most crucial discovery concerning the fur seal's life history. During the Alaska Commercial Company's 20-year lease, the land harvest was very successful, and revenues earned by the U.S. government more than paid off the purchase price of the Alaskan Territory, a cost of $7.2 million. These massive profits and increased sale prices for fur seal skins attracted international attention. Soon Canadian, American, and later Japanese sealing vessels flocked to these islands every summer. Thus began an onslaught of pelagic sealing, or the killing of fur seals at sea. This practice was horribly wasteful. Reports stated that sealers retrieved fewer than 1 out of every 5 seals shot. With harvesting coming from both land and sea, the fur seal population faltered from the increased pressure. In 1890, Elliott returned to the Pribilof Islands following a 14-year absence, but his romantic memories had been shattered.
I may as well frankly confess that I was wholly unaware of the extraordinary state of affairs which stared me in the face. Not even a faint suggestion of 1872 appeared.
Elliott reacted to the land harvest, stating that the excessive driving exhausted and overheated the bachelor seals to the point they became sterile. However, he had no scientific proof. Elliott heard other reasons, learning from incumbent treasury agents that the fur seal population had been declining for some years. The ACC had struggled to reach its annual quota and tapped into previously untouched rookeries. Reports surfaced of smaller skins leaving the islands, potentially indicating that younger fur seals were harvested. During his visits to the rookeries, Elliott also saw the shores littered with corpses and fully realized the impact of pelagic sealing. Even after an international tribunal established a 60-mile safe zone around the Pribilofs in 1894, pelagic sealing continued to increase, doubling that summer. The pelagic hunters knew the seals would come to them. Female fur seals must eat to support themselves, their fertilized egg, and to produce milk for their growing pups. To fulfill these demands, mothers venture out on foraging trips for hundreds of kilometers, typically lasting more than a week. It's in these same waters that the hunters waited, slaughtering the pregnant females and any chance of survival for their waiting pups. As pelagic sealers raced to capture as many seals as they could, females were the majority of victims. Their relentless greed killed at least 3 seals in one. The population crashed in 15 years. Due to the carelessness of both the land and sea harvesting, Elliott lost his trust in the industry he once supported. Over the next 20 years, he spearheaded a passionate and controversial campaign, fighting for the fur seal against governments, businessmen, and scientists. In 1911, his persistence culminated in the first International Wildlife Conservation Treaty, which ended pelagic sealing and limited the U.S. land harvest. Elliott continued to fight for the fur seals until he died, and today is credited as the man who saved the northern fur seal from extinction. The fur seals were given the opportunity to bounce back, and by the 1940s, they recovered to their former abundance. Scientists say that abundance is closer to 2 million seals, or about half of Elliott's estimate, which has led to continued criticism of Elliott as a scientist. However, Elliott's maps did clearly depict the fur seal's distribution and helped him prove their rapid decline. Henry Elliott was one man who made a difference by saving a species. His scientific pursuit promoted a history of Pribilof fur seal research, and today, the northern fur seal is one of the most studied animals on the planet. But Elliott's legacy is in jeopardy. Although more than 2 million fur seals again covered the Pribilof shores, by 1988, a fraction remained. The population continues to drop, declining by 6% per year since 1998. Since Elliott's day, some rookeries have disappeared altogether. Unlike the other historical declines, this one cannot be blamed directly on commercial sealing. These seals have not been harvested for fur since 1984. The problem appears to be that fewer and fewer young animals return to the Pribilofs each year. They are not surviving the winter migrations to and from the North Pacific.
Well, as early as the 1960s, maybe a few years earlier than that, seals were returning to the Pribilof Islands to their breeding colonies with stuff they found in the ocean, entangled around their necks, around their bodies.
Young and old seals confused garbage and fishing nets with kelp, and their curiosity was their undoing. During the 1970s and 1980s, the entanglement rate was high, which increased mortality. Today, entanglement is still a problem, but fishermen have worked to minimize waste, and local programs are in place to help injured seals.
And with anything like this dynamic that we're seeing in the population, there are a variety of explanations. I would be convinced that entanglement is a piece of it. It may be a relatively small piece now. I certainly would not go so far as to say that entanglement is the only thing causing this decline.
As Elliott discovered during the Great Decline of the pelagic sealing era, fur seal pups starved on the Pribilof shores as hunters killed their mothers during their foraging trips. Today, there is pressure on fur seals in these very same locations. Commercial fishing has increased in the Bering Sea, including the waters surrounding the Pribilof Islands. Some scientists suspect that the increased competition for their food source may be adversely affecting the fur seals. This fishing pressure may not be confined to the Bering Sea, but throughout the fur seal's migration route, making foraging tougher for young and inexperienced animals. Another problem facing the Pribilof fur seals could be pollution of the world's oceans. No measurable effects have been found from oil spills, but industrial waste compounds are increasing in both seal blubber and mother's milk. Weaned pups may be more vulnerable at sea, as elevated contaminants weaken their immune systems. Causes for the decline may also be natural. Disease has been ruled out, but it could be a cycle of predator-prey dynamics. Orcas are abundant in the North Pacific, and fur seals make a good meal, rich in energy. An additional leading theory is that this decline is a cyclical pattern of nature. Scientists have documented a warming trend across the North Pacific Ocean that has altered the distribution of fish and squid, which the fur seals depend on. Current conditions are undoubtedly different from Elliott's time. The Pribilof Islands and the North Pacific may no longer be able to support the millions that once lived here. However, the inability to pinpoint a cause does not nullify the fact that the Pribilof fur seals are declining at a startling rate. During Elliott's campaign for the fur seal, he once wrote,
"There is a universal, a hearty wish, not only at home but abroad, that these Alaskan fur seal rookeries be preserved. The great equilibrium which nature holds in life upon Earth must be sustained at St. Paul as well as elsewhere."
Somehow, Henry Wood Elliott's legacy of saving the northern fur seal needs to be maintained. For if he were to return today, he would look for the great herds that once covered the Seal Islands, but now see only grass and rock.